This is the United States Energy Association Power Sector Podcast. I'm Herman K. Trabish. I've covered the power sector since 2006. I currently report for Utility Die. In this episode of the podcast series about people leading the emergence of 21st century power, we're going to talk with World Resources Institute, or WRI, Director Lori Bird. She's going to describe some of WRI's past accomplishments and current concerns, and some of its many ongoing initiatives to lead the nation in meeting the rapidly growing electricity demand, keep decarbonizing the economy, and keep electricity affordable. Lori heads the WRI's U.S. energy program. She's helped lead WRI work in transportation electrification, system flexibility, new market design, and utility decarbonization. And before joining WRI, she worked in research, including almost 2 decades as principal analyst with DOE's National Renewable Energy Laboratory, where her focus was renewable energy policy, markets, and grid integration. So, Lori, what is the World Resources Institute? What's its history? And what role does the program that you head up on U.S. energy play in the Institute's mission?
So WRI is a global environmental organization that focuses on solving solutions to the world's environmental problems through research and analysis, so policy that's informed by research. And we have offices around the globe in multiple countries in India, China, Indonesia, Mexico, and other parts of Latin America, Africa, and so forth, and the U.S. office. So, and I lead the U.S. energy program. We're now part of the Polsky Center for the Global Energy Transition, which is a new center that we launched earlier this year that encompasses the entire global energy program at WRI and all of our work. So
just in time to pick up some of the slack from the cancellation of the USAID program.
Yes, and some other things. Yeah, so some of the history of WRI is, we've been heavily involved in global climate negotiations and COP, for a long time. We've also have a long history of working with large corporations to help them advance their clean energy goals and climate commitments, and multiple programs around that. For example, WRI was one of the nonprofits that helped found the Clean Energy Buyers Association, which is now a large organization on its own today. So the U.S. energy program. Oh yeah,
Lori, just a minute before you go on. If I recall correctly, that buyers program really made a big impact on private corporations helping drive the birth of the clean energy industry in this country.
That's true. Yes, and the amount of clean energy that the members of the organization purchases is enormous. It's a very large fraction of new capacity that comes online every year, and I believe they've just passed 100 gigawatts of combined purchases. So, what does the U.S. energy program at WRI do? Our strategy is targeted around 4 different areas. We accelerate demand for clean energy on the grid, so on the supply side, including trying to make sure that we have sufficient investments in the grid, transmission and distribution grid to enable clean energy deployment. We focus on demand side efforts to drive clean energy, so city and corporate purchasing of clean energy, as well as industrial decarbonization. We focus on equitable access for clean energy, and a new area of work is around critical minerals. So we've been launching that.
Interesting. Okay, I want to get just a little bit farther into WRI's leadership in energy. So I'd like to ask you to tell us a little bit about how in the past, WRI has done research and analysis that impacted the energy sector. We talked about the Buyers Association. You can elaborate on that if you like, and how WRI's leadership has helped advance the use of affordable, reliable, clean energy in this country.
Yeah, so we've, if I, I can focus on just a few of the research products that we've done in recent years.
Great.
Just recently, we did work on next generation geothermal technologies with the
Uh,
goal of an initiative report and materials around that, with the goal of educating key stakeholders about the technology, the concerns. It does involve um, hydraulic fracturing and so there can be some concerns associated with the technologies, but also substantial benefits in the way
yeah,
that it operates. So
that's we should tell the listeners just so they'll know. Advanced geothermal is different than traditional geothermal. In traditional geothermal, people had to find places where the hot water was already available. Advanced geothermal is a way of drilling down to the heat, putting water in and getting it out. And as long as they're putting water in and getting it out in a balanced way, it's relatively safe. Am I getting all that right? I hate to say things
that's right. It can be done in a lot more locations. And we've seen very significant advancements in the drilling technologies that is bringing the cost down very rapidly. So there's been a lot of interest in it, and investments and you know um, purchase agreements with utilities and other large corporate buyers with some of the companies that are moving forward in that area. So
yeah,
lots of
that's a
opportunity
really
there.
a comer. That technology is really a comer. You were going to mention something else, I think.
Yeah, a few other things. We've also prepared a lot of resources to help cities and states move forward with clean energy adoption. So we have a lot of materials there on how to implement incentives like direct pay, but also just other ways that they can move forward with implementation of adopting clean energy within their communities, and all different strategies to do that. We've done work to encourage corporates to take actions beyond just purchasing clean energy to help us get to a 100% clean energy grid. And we've done a series of papers as well on power market reforms and how that, some of the important issues that we need to address going forward to be able to meet clean energy goals. So, it's just a sampling of the kinds of research that we've done recently.
Yeah, we'd be here all afternoon if we had to go through everything WRI does. It's a really remarkable organization. I want to move to something really contemporary. You recently moderated a webinar, a WRI webinar, and you had a former Biden administration official, a former federal energy regulator appointed by President Trump, and two veteran energy analysts on. And they talked about how in this very dynamic political environment, the U.S. power sector can still meet with wise guidance, rapidly growing electricity demand and keep decarbonizing the economy and protect the affordability of electricity. What were your takeaways from that conversation? It was a long conversation, and I'm asking sort of the impossible, but if you were to summarize that conversation and how maybe WRI's work fits with what those folks were talking about, what were your takeaways?
Well, I think one of the key areas that we discussed in depth was just the uncertainty that's been created in the current political and market environment and the challenges of navigating that. So not only the discussion at the federal level of the reconciliation bill that could change all the tax incentives for clean energy, which is a big uncertainty. We also have the uncertainty of trade tariffs and what those might mean for costs. And it's very challenging to move forward with project development right now in this very uncertain time. There's other challenges as well that are interesting and are going to make it difficult, I think, to meet all of the load growth that we're seeing, right? In terms of we have seen reforms passed by FERC, in terms of the transmission planning rule, which is an excellent step forward to be planning. But it's a long-term, process. Like the change that we're going to see from those kinds of reforms take many years, right? The same thing. I mean, the interconnection reforms that were also adopted by FERC are also kind of making their way through. But again, it takes time for these to uh, make to improve the speed with which we can interconnect facilities. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
going to,
and yeah, I want to add, excuse me for interrupting, but I want to add that I'm doing currently doing some reporting on FERC order that tries to streamline interconnection. And a developer told me the most significant factor slowing development and slowing the addition of generation to the system is what you just mentioned, uncertainty. That is even more important than prices, rules, what have you. He said that uncertainty is what slows the financing and development of generation. So we, as you said, we've got this demand growing and all this uncertainty.
Yeah, it's challenging for if you talk to corporate buyers and developers about it, a lot of the corporates are still trying to buy clean energy to meet their commitments and their electricity needs. But the figuring out the pricing is really challenging when you have these swings of not knowing what the tax credits will be and not knowing the level of the trade tariffs and what that means. So there's a lot of risk there in the negotiations and who will bear that. So yeah, it's a key challenge. There's also other, I think there was a lot of discussion too about just the rapidly shifting cost environment and the challenge of maintaining energy affordability in the near term and the longer term. We're seeing, much higher gas prices in the marketplace and also shortages of gas turbines. There's a lot of talk about building new gas, but it is challenging. There's a shortage of gas turbines in the marketplace, so that's constraining as well. Renewables are relatively, they're quicker to install, they're domestic resources, they have less fuel risk and so forth. So there are definite advantages to moving forward with them. There's many of them. About 90% of the interconnection queue is comprised of solar, wind, and batteries. And so there are projects that are ready to go, but there's these questions of how quickly we can move forward with them.
One of the aspects of the reconciliation bill you mentioned, as we talk, it has been passed by the House and moved to the Senate, where theoretically the Senate may have some significant impact. But one of the interesting aspects that people aren't talking about too much is the FEOC, Foreign Entity of Concern provision, which beginning in 2026 requires everybody who's receiving tax credits or using tax credits that support renewable energy to have ownership, control, operation, material assistance in construction from no foreign entities of concern. And the definition of that becomes very challenging, which means it will require Treasury guidance, which could easily take a couple of years and get us into 2026 when the tax credits that are provided by the reconciliation bill are phased out. Lori, have I got all that right? And doesn't that add even more to the likelihood of uncertainty and falling off of renewable development?
Yeah, the foreign entity of concern provisions are a key issue and challenge associated with the new text in the House reconciliation bill. So yeah, it's one of the things that really could just stymie the industry. It's unclear, very complex, and very unclear how it would be met. It's unclear how the rules would be developed, and it would take quite some time. There's some precedent for these kinds of rules. We've seen it in the EV tax credits in the past, a version of this for vehicle manufacturing and use of materials. Right. That were more workable. This is very complex. The treatment of all of the subcomponents of projects is very, very unmanageable. And there are other versions of this that have been advocated for that do not include those that could be much more workable. So that's a real key challenge with the current tax credit proposal. Other issues too, the recent revision to the text is the commenced construction within 60 days of the enactment of the bill. So that's a big shift from the earlier version, and as well as the placed in service date by the end of 2028. So those are critical issues that are changes that we saw very rapidly as it moved from the committees to the approval in the House. So all fairly problematic in terms of having a large number of projects be able to take advantage of the credits.
Yeah. And one other thing that you mentioned, Lori, I want to drill into. You talked about the price of electricity, the price of energy. What's going to happen? You said 90% of the development in queues, electricity development in queues is renewable. So if all these projects wind up being delayed, discouraged, or completely eliminated, you put more demand on what's left, which is coal, natural gas, um, maybe bringing some more use of nuclear energy, but probably that would be hard to get online in any reasonable amount of time. So with that more demand, electricity prices go up because you have to pay more for these fossil fuels, not to mention, of course, the emissions, right? Is that
That's
correct?
true. There are several studies there that estimate the impact on bills, and with rate increases of 7% or more recently, or in early years, and more than $100 in increase in residential electricity bills. So yeah,
Yeah.
it can be substantial, the impacts there. There's a couple of good studies that have just come out on that.
And if you eliminate EVs, then people are going to be using more gasoline. That drives up the demand for gasoline. That drives up the price of a gasoline. And right away, you have what amounts to a tax on gasoline, although it doesn't go into the public coffers to help pay for our national expenses, like extreme weather events. Instead, it goes into the pockets of private providers of gasoline, whoever they may be. You think that's right too?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think that, well, there's a number of challenges. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about drill, baby, drill. We're going to have more oil and gas drilling in the US. Currently, oil prices are too low to encourage more activity, and there's been multiple articles about this recently. So we're not seeing that, and global supplies, are such that
Yeah.
is the issue right now. So that's a shifting market as the demand changes over time. There are some supplies there, but yeah, the administration has been very focused on expanding some domestic production, and we don't see any signs that that's going to be happening near
Uh,
term.
but the other half, the part that interests me is that if you take away the EV demand by eliminating the tax credit, then you have more demand for gasoline, which could drive up demand. I guess it's a balance, a supply-demand balance that we have to see how it plays out. But we're running out of time, Lori, so I don't want to dwell on that. I do want to go to this last question. We obviously live in a time of enormous political change. So what is WRI focusing on? What are its most pressing policy concerns, and how is it addressing them in the few minutes that we have left? Tell us a little
Well, I
about
think we did talk about the tax credits. I mean, we are certainly, that's a number one priority for the industry overall today. I think some of the other things that are really important are these policies to make sure that we do get grid expansion and the implementation of FERC Order 1920, and encouraging implementation of ways of grid enhancing technologies and other ways to expand the existing grid more rapidly than building new transmission capacity and transmission lines. So those are priorities. We're certainly doing a lot of work at the state and local level to help those cities and states meet their continuing clean energy goals. And so a lot of work there, and a lot of interest in just figuring out the path forward at that level. We've historically done a lot of that work, and it's even more important today to continue that. So a heavy focus there. And we're doing increasing work to try to, which I think is a growing area of work for us on some of the siting challenges for
it.
clean energy.
Yeah,
So,
it's a big one. We're gonna do a series of podcasts on that subject in the near future. Um, Okay, and by the way, I gotta say that your work at the local level is so important. It's quick, it's said quickly, work at the local level, but man, is it important to get that the awareness of what's possible to folks in cities and communities. So I think it's a wonderful
Definitely.
thing that you
Yeah,
do.
definitely.
Okay, that's more than enough time for today. I have to thank my guest, World Resources Institute Director Lori Berg. She's described some of the ways WRI has been a leader through its past accomplishments and its many ongoing initiatives to rapidly meet, excuse me, to meet the rapidly growing electricity demand, continue decarbonizing the economy, and keep electricity affordable. I also want to thank our listeners for taking the time to check out the USEA Power Sector Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with everybody you know our quest for energy transition solutions.